Olivia Vance inherited more than just her family's ancestral home, she inherited its secrets, etched into the tarnished silver of an antique vanity mirror. Restoring the pieces meant to be a reclamation, a way to anchor herself in a house filled with the ghosts of complex memories, particularly those involving her identical twin sister, Isabel. But the reflection staring back begins to warp, twisting Olivia's own image into something unsettlingly familiar yet terrifyingly other. It starts with a flicker, then a gesture, then a shared memory only they would know, mirroring not Olivia, but the sister she's increasingly estranged from. The glass becomes a battleground for identity, forcing Olivia to confront the entity staring back and the fractured bond with her twin before the mirror consumes her entirely. Let's begin the story. Get comfortable and listen closely. The house sighed around Olivia like a tired old lung. Dust motes danced in the weak afternoon light filtering through grimy window panes, illuminating the geography of neglect. It had been her grandmother's house, then briefly her parents', and now, through a complicated twist of inheritance and Isabel's pointed lack of interest in ancient, drafty money pits, it was Olivia's. Or rather, Olivia was its caretaker. Settling in felt less like coming home and more like becoming a reluctant curator of familial tension preserved in amber varnish and yellowing wallpaper. Her boots echoed on the hardwood floors of the master bedroom upstairs, a cavernous space dominated by a towering, ridiculously ornate vanity mirror. Its gilded frame, depicting cherubs and ivy leaves now dulled with age, held a large, slightly cloudy-looking glass. This piece, more than any other, felt like the heart of the house's history, a silent witness to generations of Vance women. Olivia, an art restorer by trade, felt a professional itch alongside a more personal compulsion. Restoring this vanity wouldn't just be a project, it would be an act of claiming space, of polishing away the patina of being the second twin, the quiet one overshadowed by Isabel's effortless sparkle. Her phone buzzed, shattering the quiet. Izzy. Olivia let it ring 3 times before answering, bracing herself. Liv. You settling into the mausoleum okay? Izzy's voice was bright, breezy, and carried the usual undertone of amused pity. It's big, Olivia said, non-committal. Still unpacking. Sent you that care package, did you get it? Gourmet coffee, some decent wine. Figured you'd need it. Place probably doesn't even have proper heating. It's fine, Izzy. Thanks. Olivia could picture her sister perfectly, leaning back in her sleek, modern apartment office chair, effortlessly juggling work calls and social plans, the city skyline gleaming behind her. Worlds away from this dusty heirloom of a house. So, are you actually going to live there? Or just camp out until you can flip it? The old resentment simmered. I live here now. And I'm not flipping it. I thought I'd restore some things. Starting with Grandma's old vanity. A pause. Then, Izzy's laugh, light but sharp. That monstrous thing? Seriously, Liv? It always gave me the creeps. Remember how we used to dare each other to stare into it in the dark? Olivia did remember. Izzy always won, staring defiantly while Olivia felt a prickle of unease, convinced something looked back from the shadowed depths. It's a valuable antique, Olivia said stiffly. It just needs work. Whatever floats your boat, I guess. Just don't get lost in the past, okay? Call me if you need rescuing from the ghosts. Another laugh, then a quick goodbye filled with plans Olivia wasn't part of. The silence that followed felt heavier. Ghosts. Maybe Izzy wasn't entirely wrong. The house felt thick with unspoken things, lingering disagreements, the echoes of diverging paths. Olivia walked over to the vanity, her reflection appearing dim and distorted in the tarnished glass. Her own face, yet also Izzy's. They'd been identical, perfectly mirrored as children, but life had etched subtle differences. Stress lines Izzy didn't have, a wariness in the eyes Izzy masked with confidence. She spent the rest of the afternoon carefully cleaning the frame, gently removing decades of grime. Then, she started on the glass itself, using a specialized cleaner and soft cloths. The silvering was old, possibly mercury-based, which could account for some waviness or distortion. She worked meticulously, section by section, her reflection becoming clearer, sharper. She leaned in close, examining a stubborn smudge near the edge. As she wiped, she focused on her hand in the reflection. For a fraction of a second, it seemed wrong. Her real hand moved left, but the reflected hand hesitated, lagged almost imperceptibly, before catching up. Olivia froze, pulling her hand back. She stared. Her reflection stared back, perfectly still, perfectly mimicking her sudden tension. Weird. She tried the motion again, slowly, deliberately. Wipe left. The reflection matched perfectly. Wipe right. Perfect match. She shook her head, rubbing her eyes. Fatigue. The strange light. The old, potentially warped glass. And maybe just the inherent strangeness of staring so intently at her own face, a face so intrinsically linked to the sister who now felt like a continent away. It was easy to feel detached, disconnected, like watching a stranger who happened to look just like her. Later that evening, sorting through a box of old photographs, she found one of them as children. Two girls, maybe 7 or 8, identical freckled noses, matching dresses, but their expressions were already diverging. Izzy beamed at the camera, arm thrown possessively around Olivia's shoulder. Olivia looked slightly off to the side, a hesitant, thoughtful expression on her face, as if already contemplating something beyond the frame. She held the photo up, glancing from it to her reflection in the now cleaner, clearer vanity mirror. The solitary figure in the glass seemed to emphasize the chasm that had grown between them. Shared face, separate lives. The mirror reflected her present isolation starkly. She put the photo down, a familiar ache tightening her chest. Polishing the past wasn't just about wood and glass, she realized. It was about confronting the reflections of what was, and what could no longer be. And as she turned off the light, leaving the vanity gleaming faintly in the dark, she couldn't shake the feeling that something within the glass had watched her go. A few days passed in a routine of restoration work and settling in. Olivia meticulously documented the vanity's construction, researched period-appropriate finishing techniques, and carefully repaired minor damage to the frame. The house remained quiet, its size settling into a familiar background rhythm. Her interactions with Izzy were limited to brief, functional texts. Olivia found herself spending more time near the vanity, partly for work, partly drawn by an inexplicable pull. She was practicing applying a tiny bead of filler to a chip in the wooden frame, concentrating fiercely. Muttering instructions to herself, "Easy does it, blend it smoothly," she glanced up to check the overall effect in the mirror. Her reflection met her gaze. And then, it smirked. It wasn't a full-blown grin. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible lifting at one corner of the mouth, accompanied by a fractional narrowing of the eyes. A fleeting expression, but Olivia knew it instantly. It was Izzy's smirk. The specific, condescending little twist of the lips Izzy employed when she thought Olivia was being naive, or when she was about to deliver a subtly cutting remark disguised as a joke. Olivia stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. The filler tube clattered to the floor. She stared, wide-eyed, at the reflection. Her own face stared back, mirroring her shock, mouth slightly open, eyes wide. The smirk was gone. Vanished as if it had never been there. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, I didn't." Her mind raced. Trick of the light? A muscle twitch? Stress? She tried to replicate the expression herself, consciously tightening the corner of her mouth. It felt forced, unnatural. Nothing like the fleeting, instantly recognizable condescension she'd just seen. She spent the rest of the day jumpy, casting wary glances at the vanity. Every time, her reflection was just that, a reflection. Passive, imitative. Yet, the image of that smirk was burned into her mind. It felt targeted. Personal. Over the next few days, the anomalies became more frequent, though still subtle. While brushing her hair, lost in thought, she looked up to see her reflection casually tuck a strand behind its ear, exactly the way Izzy did, a quick, almost dismissive flick of the wrist Olivia had always found slightly affected. Olivia never tucked her hair like that. Her own hand was still holding the brush. Another time, while anxiously pacing about a delayed shipment of restoration supplies, she caught her reflection tapping its fingers impatiently on the vanity surface. It was Izzy's rhythm, the one she used when waiting in line or stuck in traffic, a staccato beat Olivia recognized instantly. Olivia's own hands were clenched at her sides. It was still her face in the mirror, her tired eyes, her slightly furrowed brow, but the gestures felt grafted on, borrowed from Izzy's specific repertoire of mannerisms. It was like watching a performance, an unsettling mimicry using her own features as the stage. The reflection wasn't just lagging anymore, it was improvising, and its improvisations all pointed towards Isabel. The uncanny feeling curdled into a constant, low-grade dread. Was she losing her mind? Was the stress of the move, the isolation, the unresolved tension with Izzy finally cracking something inside her? She needed to talk to someone, but who would believe her? She finally broke down and called Izzy, dialing the number with trembling fingers. "Hey, Liv," Izzy answered, her voice slightly distracted. "Everything okay? You sound weird." Izzy, something strange is happening. With the mirror. Grandma's vanity. Olivia struggled to find the words, acutely aware of how insane she sounded. The creepy mirror? What about it? It's my reflection. Sometimes, it doesn't. It doesn't quite match. Olivia took a deep breath. It does things. Little things. Like gestures. Your gestures. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then Izzy laughed, but it lacked its usual lightness. My gestures? What are you talking about, Liv? Like the way you tuck your hair? Or that tapping thing you do? I saw it. In the reflection. It wasn't me doing it. Olivia's voice was tight with desperation. It's like looking in the mirror and sometimes seeing you looking back. Your expressions. Another pause, longer this time. When Izzy spoke again, her tone was laced with a careful, almost clinical concern that felt worse than dismissal. Liv. Are you feeling alright? Really? There's been a lot going on. The move, the house. It's a lot to handle alone. I'm not imagining it, Izzy. Okay, Izzy said soothingly, the way one might talk to a spooked child. But Liv, it's a mirror. An old, probably warped mirror. Maybe you're just stressed, tired. Maybe, her voice took on a familiar edge, a hint of the old rivalry surfacing, maybe you just miss me? Or maybe you wish you were a bit more like me? The words landed like tiny shards of ice. Olivia felt a flush of heat creep up her neck, a volatile mix of humiliation and fury. Izzy hadn't just dismissed her, she'd turned it back, subtly twisting it into a commentary on Olivia's perceived inadequacies. It was exactly the kind of psychological jab Izzy specialized in, the kind the reflection had mimicked with that infuriating smirk. No, Olivia said, her voice cold. That's not it. Look, maybe I should come down for a weekend, Izzy offered, though the suggestion lacked real enthusiasm. Check on you. Make sure you haven't gone full shining in that old place. I'm fine, Olivia snapped, cutting the conversation short with a curt goodbye. She hung up, trembling. Izzy's reaction, her casual dismissal wrapped in faux concern, cemented Olivia's isolation. She wasn't just dealing with a potentially haunted mirror, she was dealing with it utterly alone. The entity in the glass, wearing her face but borrowing Izzy's mannerisms, felt less like a hallucination now and more like a deliberate, invasive presence. And Izzy's words echoed in the silent room, deepening the unease into a chilling certainty. Whatever was happening in the mirror was somehow intimately connected to the fractured, resentful space between her and her twin. The sister in the glass wasn't just mimicking Izzy, it felt like it was weaponizing her. The reflection's performance grew bolder, evolving from fleeting mimicry into something more akin to independent commentary. It wasn't just copying Izzy's gestures anymore, it was using them in context, reacting to Olivia's moods and actions with an unsettling semblance of awareness. If Olivia sighed in frustration over a stubborn knot in the wood grain she was sanding, she'd glance up to see Mirror Liv wearing Izzy's specific "I told you so" expression, eyebrows slightly raised, a faint, knowing curve to the lips. When Olivia accidentally spilled coffee on an old dropcloth, Mirror Liv adopted Izzy's look of exasperated impatience. It felt less like a glitchy reflection and more like a passive-aggressive audience of one, constantly observing, constantly judging through the filter of Izzy's perceived personality. Olivia started avoiding the mirror, working with her back to it, catching glimpses only when absolutely necessary. But the feeling of being watched, of being silently critiqued by that borrowed persona in the glass, was pervasive. It permeated the room, amplifying the house's inherent gloom. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Olivia turned her restorative skills towards the vanity's history. She spent hours online, digging through local historical society archives, property records, and old newspaper databases. The vanity wasn't just old, it was very old, likely late 18th or early 19th century, possibly French or English in origin. Finding specific provenance for furniture that had been in a family for generations was notoriously difficult, but she searched for any mention of the Vance family acquiring unusual pieces, any local legends tied to mirrors or reflections. Her search eventually led her to a name, Mr. Elias Thorne, a semi-retired local antique dealer and historian known for his encyclopedic knowledge of the area's more eccentric artifacts. Olivia found his number and called, explaining her interest in the large vanity mirror from the old Vance house. Mr. Thorne's voice was dry and crackling, like old parchment. Ah yes, the Vance place. Big mirror, gilded frame, cherubs looking rather worse for wear? That's the one, Olivia confirmed, a flicker of hope igniting. Quite a piece, Thorne mused. Been in the family ages, hasn't it? Always thought there was something. particular about that one. Heard whispers over the years, you know how these old towns are. Whispers? What kind of whispers? Olivia pressed, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. Oh, bits and pieces. Stories change over time. Some said it belonged to sisters, way back. Maybe twins, like you and your sister, Miss Vance? Olivia froze. How did he know she had a twin? Local knowledge, she supposed, or maybe he'd known her family. Rumor was, Thorne continued, oblivious to her reaction, one of them became rather attached to it. Or perhaps, attached to her sister through it. Ended badly, as those stories often do. A disappearance, some said. Others claimed she simply wasted away, staring into the glass. Olivia's blood ran cold. Did they say why? What was supposed to be wrong with the mirror? Ah, now that's where it gets hazy. Some folks blame the silvering. Old techniques, mercury and other things, could supposedly trap echoes. Others mentioned symbols carved into the back of the frame, hidden beneath the mounting. Never saw them myself, mind you. Just local folklore, he chuckled dryly. Probably just an old wives' tale to explain away a family tragedy. Still, makes for a good story, doesn't it? Olivia thanked him, her mind reeling. Sisters. Twins. Obsession. Disappearance. It was too close, too specific to be mere coincidence. Folklore or not, it resonated with a terrifying certainty. She immediately examined the back of the mirror frame, running her fingers over the rough wood where it met the wall mountings. Nothing obvious. Perhaps the symbols were inside, or had been painted over. The need to document, to prove what she was seeing, became overwhelming. If she could just capture it on video, show someone, maybe even Izzy, definitive proof, then they'd have to believe her. She set up her smartphone on a small tripod across the room, aimed directly at the vanity. She pressed record, then walked towards the mirror, trying to act naturally. She brushed her hair. Mirror Liv mimicked perfectly. She touched her face. Mirror Liv copied. She tried talking to herself, hoping to elicit one of the Izzy expressions. Nothing. The reflection remained stubbornly, perfectly normal. She sighed in frustration, the genuine emotion bubbling up. She glanced at the mirror. Her old frustrated sigh stared back. No smirk. No impatient tapping. Nothing. She tried again later, leaving the camera running while she worked nearby. She deliberately knocked over a small tool. She looked up quickly, heart pounding. Her reflection showed only her own startled face. Reviewing the footage was even more disheartening. On the small screen, Olivia looked jumpy. Paranoid. She reacted to seemingly nothing, glancing nervously at a perfectly normal reflection. The subtle shifts in expression, the borrowed mannerisms, if they had occurred, were completely lost in the digital translation, too fleeting or too nuanced for the camera to capture convincingly. The video didn't prove the mirror was haunted, it made Olivia look unstable. The gaslighting felt complete, extending beyond the entity in the glass to the technology she'd hoped would be her witness. She was alone with it, the sister in the glass, and her insidious performance remained perfectly, terrifyingly, deniably hers. The failed documentation left her feeling more trapped than ever, the mirror's power seeming to lie not just in its reflection, but in its ability to isolate her in a reality no one else could see. The uncanny valley deepened, shifting from borrowed mannerisms to something far more invasive, shared history. Mirror Liv began reacting not just to Olivia's present actions, but to triggers connected to specific memories, moments known only to her and Izzy. It was as if the entity wasn't just mimicking Izzy's persona, but actively accessing the complex tapestry of their shared past. One evening, while sorting through the box of old photos again, Olivia lingered on a picture from their teenage years. It was taken at their high school graduation party. Both twins wore identical caps and gowns, but their faces told different stories. Izzy was laughing, surrounded by friends, basking in the attention. Olivia stood slightly apart, holding her diploma, a complex expression on her face, pride mixed with a familiar shadow of feeling eclipsed. She remembered that night vividly, a specific, whispered argument with Izzy behind the garage, accusations and defenses volleyed in hushed, angry tones about college choices and perceived betrayals. As Olivia stared at the photo, lost in the bittersweet sting of the memory, she glanced up at the vanity mirror. Mirror Liv wasn't mimicking her current wistful expression. Instead, its face was tight with a cold, barely suppressed fury, its jaw clenched in a way that perfectly mirrored Izzy's expression during that hidden argument years ago. The reflection held the look for only a second before smoothing back into Olivia's own features, but the recognition hit Olivia like a physical blow. It knew. It was reflecting not just a person, but a specific, private moment. This became a disturbing pattern. Looking at a childhood drawing they'd made together? Mirror Liv adopted the secretive, conspiratorial grin Izzy wore when they were planning mischief. Handling a tarnished silver locket that had been a source of contention between them? Mirror Liv's eyes narrowed with possessive resentment, just as Izzy said during the fight over who got to inherit it first. It was psychological warfare waged with the ammunition of memory. Then came the mouthing. It started subtly. Olivia would be working, or simply sitting in the room, and catch movement in the periphery of the mirror. When she looked directly, Mirror Liv would be still. But if she watched intently, catching it at just the right angle, she saw its lips moving silently, forming words. At first, they were indecipherable shapes. But as Olivia grew more attuned, watching with a horrified fascination, she began to recognize fragments. Phrases Izzy had hurled during bitter arguments, snippets of conversations laced with jealousy or misunderstanding. "You always do this. It's not fair. Why can't you just be happy for me? Mom always liked you better anyway." The silent words hung in the air, unheard but deeply felt, replaying the worst moments of their sisterhood. It felt like the reflection wasn't just accessing memories, it was curating them, selecting the most painful ones, weaponizing their shared history against Olivia's already fragile peace of mind. The mirror had become a distorted archive of their resentments. Shaken and desperate for validation, Olivia called Izzy again. This time, she didn't focus on the gestures, but on the memories. "Izzy, it's worse," Olivia began, her voice trembling. "The reflection. It's reacting to things. Our things. Old photos, memories. It knows things only we would know." She described the graduation photo incident, the locket, trying to convey the chilling specificity. There was a long silence on the other end, filled only with the faint static of the line. When Izzy finally spoke, the earlier dismissal was gone, replaced by genuine alarm, though not the kind Olivia had hoped for. "Liv," Izzy said, her voice low and serious. "Okay, listen to me. This isn't about the mirror anymore. This is about you. You're alone in that huge, creepy house, dredging up all this old stuff. Maybe the stress, maybe grief about Grandma, maybe our old issues are getting projected onto this object." "No, Izzy, it's real," Olivia insisted, tears welling up. "It mouthed things you said. Things you said during that fight about colleges." "Liv, stop," Izzy pleaded, her voice tight with worry. "You're scaring me now. You sound unwell. Maybe you need to talk to someone. A professional. Or, look, I can clear my schedule. I'll drive down this weekend. We can pack up that damn mirror together, get it out of the house. Would that help?" The offer hung in the air, a confusing vortex of emotions for Olivia. Part of her felt a desperate surge of hope. Izzy was coming, Izzy would see it, finally understand. But another, larger part felt a cold dread pooling in her stomach. What if Izzy arrived and saw nothing? What if her presence somehow placated the entity, leaving Olivia looking completely unhinged? And worse, what if Izzy's presence intensified it? What would Mirror Liv do, faced with both twins, the source of its borrowed mannerisms and weaponized memories standing right there? I don't know," Olivia stammered. "I'm coming, Liv," Izzy said firmly. "Friday night. We'll figure this out. Together." The call ended, leaving Olivia standing alone in the quiet room, the vanity mirror gleaming impassively across from her. Izzy was coming. The thought filled her not with relief, but with a sickening premonition. The mirror wasn't just reflecting their past anymore. It felt like it was actively engineering their future, orchestrating a confrontation Olivia wasn't sure she, or her relationship with her sister, could survive. In the days leading up to Izzy's arrival, Olivia found herself compulsively studying the reflection, searching for definitive proof, for some objective change she could point to. And she began to notice something new, something subtle but deeply unnerving. Mirror Liv wasn't just mimicking or reacting anymore, its own image seemed to be solidifying. It was hard to quantify. Perhaps it was the way the light hit the glass, but Mirror Liv's features seemed fractionally sharper, more defined than Olivia's own slightly weary reflection. The lines around its eyes seemed less like Olivia's stress lines and more like etched certainty. The borrowed Izzy expressions, once fleeting, now lingered, coalescing into a default persona that wasn't quite Olivia and wasn't quite Izzy, but something colder, more calculating. The eyes, especially. They held a steady, watchful intensity that felt ancient and unnervingly intelligent. It wasn't just an echo anymore, it felt like an entity looking out, assessing, its presence growing stronger, more distinct, within the confines of the silvered glass. It was crafting its own identity from the fractured pieces of the twins. Driven by a desperate need to understand the rules of engagement, Olivia began to experiment. She held up random objects, a book, a restoration tool, one of the old photographs. Would Mirror Liv react independently? Mostly, it mimicked her actions, holding a reflected copy. But once, holding the photo of them as children, she thought she saw Mirror Liv's gaze flicker away from the reflected photo towards the actual photo in Olivia's hand, just for a split second, before snapping back into perfect mimicry. Was it aware of the distinction between reflection and reality? She tried speaking to it directly, whispering questions into the silence of the room. "What are you? What do you want?" Mirror Liv's lips moved in perfect sync with hers, offering no answers, only the echo of her own voice trapped visually in the glass. Yet, the cold, watchful intelligence in its eyes seemed to intensify, as if acknowledging the address, even if it refused to respond overtly. During one of these tense, one-sided conversations, Olivia noticed something else. As she spoke, Mirror Liv's gaze seemed to drift, momentarily snagging on other reflective surfaces in the room, the polished brass base of a floor lamp, the dark glass of the windowpane reflecting the lamplight. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible shift, but it sparked a chilling thought. Was it confined only to the vanity? Or was it merely anchored there, capable of perceiving, perhaps even influencing, through other reflections? This new fear spurred her to contact Mr. Thorne again. She recounted the escalating phenomena, the memory reflections, the silent mouthing, the feeling of the entity solidifying. She hesitated, then asked about the symbols he'd mentioned. Mr. Thorne was silent for a moment, the crackle on the line emphasizing the gravity. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice lower, more serious than before. "The folklore I mentioned. It's not just about simple hauntings. Some of the darker tales don't speak of a ghost trapped in the glass, but of the mirror itself acting as a sort of psychic vessel. A debug glass, some old texts might call it, though that's borrowing terminology. Or perhaps a memory trap." "A memory trap?" Olivia repeated, the phrase sending a shiver down her spine. "The idea being," Thorne explained, "that mirrors made with certain substances, under specific conditions, especially those that witness intense, prolonged emotional energy between closely bonded individuals, like sisters, like twins, don't just reflect light. They absorb psychic residue. Emotions, memories, resentments. Over time, this accumulated energy can coalesce, creating a parasitic echo. An entity that exists solely through the reflected identities and the emotional conflict between them." "A parasitic echo," Olivia whispered. It fit perfectly with the feeling of Mirror Liv feeding off her history with Izzy, using their shared past and current friction as its substance. "These stories often warn," Thorne continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "against feeding it. Strong emotions directed at the mirror, anger, fear, obsession, supposedly strengthen it. Direct confrontation empowers it. And attempting to simply ignore it once it's awakened can provoke it." He paused. The symbols, if they exist, were supposedly wards, meant to bind or contain the echo. Without knowing what they are, or if they're even still intact. He trailed off, the implication clear. "So what do I do?" Olivia asked, her voice barely audible. "Tread carefully, Miss Vance. Especially with your sister coming. The presence of both originals. That could provide a surge of the very energy it craves. Avoid provoking it. Avoid feeding it your fear or anger directly in its sight. And perhaps," he added cryptically, "consider what truly binds you and your sister together, beyond the friction. Sometimes, the strongest wards aren't symbols carved in wood, but resolutions found in the heart." Olivia hung up, Mr. Thorne's words echoing the growing dread. The mirror wasn't just haunted, it was a vessel, feeding on her and Izzy's fractured bond. And Izzy was walking right into its larder. The image in the glass wasn't just sharpening, it felt like it was preparing, waiting for the main course. The parasitic echo, as Mr. Thorne had called it, was no longer content to merely observe and reflect. Its influence began to bleed beyond the confines of the glass, subtly manipulating Olivia and her environment, actively working to deepen the chasm between the twins before Izzy even arrived. It started with small, unsettling slips. Olivia, on a necessary phone call with a supplier, heard herself using one of Izzy's characteristic phrases, a slightly sarcastic turn of phrase she'd always privately disliked. The words felt foreign on her tongue, emerging before she could stop them. Later, while sketching a repair plan, she found herself tapping her pen in that impatient rhythm Izzy favored, a gesture she consciously tried to avoid but felt an odd compulsion to make after seeing Mirror Liv perform it countless times. It was as if the reflection's constant performance was subtly reprogramming her own subconscious habits. More disturbingly, she began noticing small changes in the bedroom. A book moved from the nightstand to the dresser, positioned exactly how Izzy would arrange things. The curtains, which Olivia preferred partially open, were drawn fully shut one morning, plunging the room into the dimness Izzy always favored, claiming it was better for her skin. These weren't Olivia's actions. She lived alone. The implication was chilling. Mirror Liv wasn't just influencing her mind, it was somehow exerting a subtle physical influence on the room, arranging it to reflect Izzy's preferences, making the space itself an extension of its borrowed persona. Or perhaps, it was subtly influencing Olivia herself during moments she didn't recall, like sleepwalking. The uncertainty was almost worse. The most blatant act of sabotage occurred 2 nights before Izzy was due to arrive. They were on a video call, ostensibly to finalize arrival times, but the conversation quickly grew tense, old grievances bubbling just below the surface. Olivia sat on her bed, her laptop positioned so the vanity mirror was visible in the background behind her. "I just think you're overreacting, Liv," Izzy was saying, her face pixelated but her frustration clear. "A weekend away from that dusty tomb will do you good." "It's my home, Izzy," Olivia retorted, trying to keep her voice even. As she spoke, her eyes flickered to the reflection of the screen within the vanity mirror. Behind her own reflected image, Mirror Liv was looking directly at the tiny image of Izzy on the laptop screen. And it made a face. A grotesque, exaggerated caricature of disgust, tongue lolling out, eyes crossed. It was childish, cruel, and utterly shocking. Olivia gasped, recoiling involuntarily. "What the hell was that?" "What was what?" Izzy asked, frowning. "Liv, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Behind me." In the mirror, Olivia stammered, pointing frantically. It made a face. "At you." Izzy's eyes narrowed. On Olivia's screen, all Izzy could see was Olivia looking panicked, pointing at a seemingly normal reflection behind her. "Made a face? Liv, are you messing with me? Or are you seriously cracking up? There's nothing there." "There is. It hates you." The words burst out before Olivia could stop them, fueled by weeks of terror and frustration. "Oh, it hates me?" Izzy's voice turned to ice. "Or is it you, Liv? Is this your twisted way of picking another fight? Using this ridiculous mirror story as an excuse? I'm coming down there out of concern, and this is how you act?" The conversation devolved rapidly into a full-blown argument, Mirror Liv silent, malevolent intervention having perfectly poisoned the well. They yelled, dredging up past hurts, misunderstandings amplified by the entity's manipulation. Olivia tried to explain, but Izzy saw only paranoia and hostility. They ended the call abruptly, anger vibrating between them. Olivia sat there, shaking, staring at the now impassive reflection. It had done that deliberately. It had seen Izzy on the screen, reacted with pure malice, and used Olivia's reaction to drive a wedge between them, isolating her further just before Izzy's arrival. It wasn't just feeding on their conflict, it was actively creating it. Filled with a surge of desperate anger, Olivia grabbed a heavy velvet throw blanket from the armchair. She wouldn't look at it anymore. She wouldn't let it watch her, influence her, manipulate her relationship. She marched towards the vanity, intent on covering the glass completely. As she approached, the air in the room grew heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread. The overhead light flickered violently. A small, porcelain figurine on the dresser rattled, then tumbled to the floor, shattering. Olivia flinched but kept going, holding the blanket aloft. She reached the vanity. As the blanket neared the glass, the reflection seemed to darken, the features within twisting into an expression of pure, incandescent rage. The temperature in the room plummeted. An invisible force seemed to push back against her, making her steps heavy, her arms weak. She threw the blanket. It billowed out, but just as it was about to cover the surface, it was violently flung back, landing in a heap at her feet as if swatted away by an unseen hand. Olivia stumbled back, gasping for breath, the intense feeling of malevolent energy leaving her dizzy and nauseated. The reflection stared back, its expression smoothing back into that cold, watchful stillness, but the eyes held a triumphant glint. It didn't want to be ignored. It wouldn't be covered. It was waiting. Waiting for Izzy. Izzy arrived late Friday night, not with the worried concern Olivia had hoped for, but with a brittle anger simmering beneath a veneer of forced calm. The fight during the video call had clearly left its mark, reinforcing Izzy's narrative that Olivia was unstable, projecting their issues onto an inanimate object. The air in the entryway crackled with unspoken accusations as Olivia let her in. "So," Izzy said, dropping her overnight bag with a thud, surveying the dimly lit hallway. "Where's the evil mirror?" Her tone was sarcastic, challenging. "Upstairs." In the bedroom, Olivia replied quietly, dread coiling in her stomach. Wordlessly, they ascended the creaking staircase, the tension stretching taut between them. As they stepped into the master bedroom, the atmosphere felt instantly charged, heavier. The vanity mirror dominated the far wall, its surface gleaming under the lamplight, seeming to pulse with a latent energy. Izzy marched towards it, stopping a few feet away, hands on her hips. "Okay, Liv. Show me. Show me the ghost in the glass that hates me." Olivia hesitated, glancing nervously between her sister and the mirror. It might not do anything right away. "It's subtle." "Subtle," Izzy scoffed, rolling her eyes. She stepped closer, peering at her own reflection alongside Olivia's. Two identical faces stared back, side by side. "See? Just us." Looking tired and stressed. But as soon as both twins were clearly reflected, the change began. It started as a flicker, a visual stutter in the glass. Mirror Liv, the entity inhabiting Olivia's reflection, seemed to vibrate. Its gaze darted rapidly between Izzy's real face and Olivia's. Then, its features began to shift, flickering unnervingly between mimicking Olivia and mimicking Izzy. One moment it wore Olivia's wary expression, the next Izzy's impatient frown, the transitions becoming faster, blurring the lines. Izzy took an involuntary step back, her skepticism faltering. "What? What is that?" The flickering intensified, then coalesced into something truly terrifying, a composite face. It was still fundamentally Olivia/Izzy, but subtly distorted, features merging and separating, Olivia's eyes with Izzy's sneer, Izzy's sharp chin with Olivia's furrowed brow. It was a living embodiment of their intertwined identities and shared conflict. Then, the silent mouthing became audible. Faint whispers seemed to emanate from the glass itself, layered and indistinct at first, like crosstalk on a radio frequency. But as Olivia and Izzy stared, frozen in shared horror, the whispers grew clearer, weaving together fragments in both their voices. "Always jealous. Izzy's voice never understood me. Olivia's voice took everything. Izzy's voice left me behind. Olivia's voice should have been me." A chilling blend of both voices. The whispers weren't just random phrases, they were targeted, twisting past events, amplifying insecurities. The composite face in the mirror watched them, its expression shifting with the accusatory whispers, playing their deepest resentments back at them. "Make it stop," Izzy whispered, her earlier bravado gone, replaced by genuine fear. She looked at Olivia, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time seeing the terror Olivia had been living with. The mirror seemed to feed on their shared fear in the sudden crack in Izzy's skepticism. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, focusing on a particularly painful shared memory, the time their grandmother had favored Olivia for a specific task, leaving Izzy feeling slighted, an incident that had festered between them for years. The composite reflection adopted an expression of smug satisfaction, mimicking the way Olivia had felt, then shifted to resentful fury, mimicking Izzy's reaction. "It's using us," Olivia realized aloud, remembering Mr. Thorne's warning. "It's feeding on this. On the anger, the resentment between us. What do we do?" Izzy asked, her voice trembling. Olivia thought of Thorne's other words, "Consider what truly binds you. Resolutions found in the heart." The mirror was powerful, but its power stemmed from their division. "We have to stop fighting each other," Olivia said, turning to face Izzy fully, ignoring the monstrous reflection for a moment. "That's what it wants. That's what makes it stronger. That fight. About Grandma. I know you felt overlooked. And maybe I didn't see it then. I was just glad she picked me for once." Izzy stared at her, surprise flickering in her eyes amidst the fear. You never said that. And you," Olivia continued, forcing the words out, "you always seemed so confident, like nothing bothered you. I never thought. I thought you didn't care." The whispers from the mirror faltered slightly as the sisters locked eyes, a different kind of energy, raw, honest, painful but not hostile, beginning to fill the space between them. The composite face flickered, its features seeming less stable. Thorne said there might be symbols, Olivia remembered suddenly. Wards. Hidden on the frame. Maybe if we together, Izzy said, a new determination hardening her expression. Ignoring the now frantic, distorted whispers and the flickering, enraged face in the glass, they moved towards the vanity. Working together, adrenaline coursing through them, they carefully but quickly examined the back, running their hands along the hidden parts of the frame near the wall mountings. Izzy's fingers snagged on something, faint indentations, almost worn smooth, concealed beneath layers of dust and old varnish. Symbols. Faint, almost invisible geometric shapes. Here. As they both focused their attention and intent on the symbols, touching the faint carvings, pouring their shared resolve, the resolution forged in their brief, honest exchange, into the act, the mirror reacted violently. The whispers became a multi-voiced shriek. The composite face contorted in agony and rage. The glass itself seemed to vibrate, and fine cracks began to appear, spider-webbing out from the edges. Olivia remembered Thorne's final piece of advice, a detail about trapping rituals sometimes involving covering the glass with something specific, something that blinds the echo. She grabbed the velvet throw blanket from the floor where it had been flung earlier. "Now," she yelled. With a shared surge of effort, fueled by fear and the fragile beginnings of reconciliation, they shoved the heavy vanity slightly away from the wall, just enough. As the shrieking reached a crescendo, Olivia threw the heavy velvet blanket over the glass, pressing it flat, while Izzy simultaneously placed both her hands firmly over the area where the symbols were carved on the back. There was a final, ear-splitting sound like shattering crystal, though the glass beneath the blanket remained intact. The intense pressure in the room vanished instantly. The air grew still. The only sound was the twins' ragged breathing. Slowly, cautiously, Olivia peeled back a corner of the blanket. The glass beneath was still whole, but the reflection was dull, flat, lifeless. It showed only the room, dimly lit, and their own pale, shaken faces staring back. The presence, the intelligence, the malevolence, it was gone. Trapped, blinded, or starved by their sudden unity, the parasitic echo was neutralized. The immediate aftermath was thick with silence and adrenaline's hangover. Olivia and Izzy stood side by side, staring at the now inert vanity, the heavy velvet blanket draped over it like a shroud. The air in the room felt blessedly empty, cleansed of the suffocating presence that had haunted Olivia for weeks. The terror had subsided, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and the raw, exposed nerves of their dredged-up relationship. Without discussion, they worked together, their earlier unity holding firm in the face of the sheer trauma. They carefully maneuvered the heavy vanity out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and into the garage, handling it as if it were radioactive. Neither wanted it in the house a moment longer. Olivia made a mental note to call Mr. Thorne, perhaps arrange for its disposal, carefully. She wouldn't risk selling it, letting that potential darkness fall into someone else's hands. Destroying it felt too dangerous, potentially releasing whatever was trapped within. Containment seemed the only sane option. Back upstairs, the bedroom felt strangely hollow without the vanity's looming presence, but lighter. They sat on the edge of Olivia's bed, the silence stretching between them, no longer tense, but filled with unspoken acknowledgments. "I'm sorry, Liv," Izzy finally said, her voice quiet, stripped of its usual defenses. "I didn't believe you. I thought you were just stressed, or trying to get attention, or, I don't know, making it about us." "It was about us," Olivia replied softly, meeting her sister's gaze. "That's what it fed on." Thorne called it a parasitic echo. It took our friction and made itself real. She hesitated. "And I'm sorry too. For not understanding. Back then. With Grandma. With a lot of things. I resented your confidence, but I never really saw how maybe you felt things too. It wasn't a magical fix. Decades of ingrained dynamics, misunderstandings, and diverging paths couldn't be erased by one night of supernatural terror. But it was a crack in the wall that had stood between them for so long. A foundation, perhaps, for something new, built on the terrifying shared knowledge of what lay reflected in the darker parts of their bond. They talked late into the night, not fixing everything, but acknowledging the fractures, sharing perspectives without the usual barbs and defenses. The mirror, in its terrible way, had forced a confrontation far deeper than either had anticipated. Izzy stayed the weekend, helping Olivia unpack a few more boxes, making the cavernous house feel marginally less isolating. When she left, the goodbye was warmer, less strained than it had been in years. There was an understanding, fragile but present, forged in the crucible of shared fear. Months passed. Olivia continued her restoration work, focusing on less psychically charged pieces of furniture. The house began to feel more like a home, its size less melancholic, more settled. She and Izzy spoke more regularly, the conversations tentative at first, but gradually easing into a new, more honest rhythm. They didn't ignore the past, but they navigated it more carefully, aware of the pitfalls. The trauma of the mirror became a strange, dark landmark in their shared history, a boundary they both implicitly respected. Olivia decided to visit Izzy in the city, a step towards bridging the gap their different lives had created. Izzy's apartment was bright, modern, the antithesis of the old Vance house. It found good to be there, to see Izzy in her element, the visit marking a hopeful step in their reconciliation. One morning, they stood side by side in Izzy's sleek, minimalist bathroom, getting ready to go out for brunch. They chatted easily, catching up. Olivia glanced up, meeting her reflection in the large, clean, modern bathroom mirror. Beside her, Izzy's reflection did the same. Perfectly normal. Two sisters, identical faces marked by their individual lives, standing together. Then, for a split second, Olivia saw it. In the reflection, Izzy's mirrored face, not Izzy herself, but her reflection, gave the faintest, almost imperceptible lift at the corner of the mouth. That specific, knowing, unsettling smirk. It was there for less than a heartbeat, a phantom flicker in the glass, before correcting itself back into Izzy's relaxed, smiling reflection. Olivia froze, her blood running cold. She blinked, staring hard. The reflection was normal again. Absolutely normal. Izzy, oblivious, continued talking about the restaurant menu. Was it just her imagination? A lingering echo of trauma, her mind playing tricks, forever scarred by the vanity? Or was Mr. Thorne's warning more profound? Was the connection between them, the intense bond of identical twins, now forever sensitized, capable of creating ripples in any reflective surface when charged with emotion, proximity, or even just memory? Was the parasitic echo truly contained, or had a fragment, an idea, latched onto their connection itself? The fear, muted for months, returned with a vengeance. The fear of the other self, the distorted reflection, the potential darkness lurking just behind the glass. She looked at Izzy, her real sister, laughing beside her. Then she glanced back at the mirror, her own reflection meeting her eyes, haunted by a doubt that might never truly fade. Any mirror. Any time they stood together. The fear remained. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.